Hi everyone, welcome to Confident Growth, the podcast for people who are passionate about personal growth and productivity. And we are here with Tjin. Hi Tjin.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you here because, I have been dying to have this conversation with you. You look like such an interesting person and we have so many friends in common.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
It's a pleasure. I thought of you, Tjin, because recently we were at a prestige event and, I'm going to say something a little controversial, but really in Singapore, I don't think there are many good panel speakers. Oftentimes, because I do this for a living, I get invited to either curate, moderate, or be on panels. And it's very, very hard in Singapore to find people who are able to translate well on panel. You know what I mean? Like they have that spark and they just are very candid and they have that sort of connection with the audience. And I was very impressed when I heard you on the Prestige panel because you were so frank and candid. Have you always been like this?
I think it's hard for people to be really authentic because there's a fear.
Yes.
That people don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yes.
Or people judge and, also with cancel culture being so rampant, people are just afraid that things will be taken out of context or just a snippet of something will be shared and, it ends up looking wrong, right? So I think that leads to a lot of people being very safe. Mm-hmm. And when everybody comes across very safe, then we don't really get into sort of the meat of the subjects.
Yes, and it's very boring, right?
Yes, and it's very not authentic. It's very safe,
Yes.
So you say the things that people want to hear or the right things to say, but the things that are controversial, which I think we all hold views, right?
Yes.
That are not always what people expect us to believe, but not many people are willing to put those views out there.
Yes, and that's why it's such a pleasure. I hope that really as far as possible, this is not mainstream media. We can be as candid as we want in today's conversation. So, Tjin, why don't you introduce yourself in whatever way you feel like doing?
Okay, so I've actually been an entrepreneur now for 24 years.
Wow.
And I was an accidental entrepreneur. People often ask if entrepreneurs are born or made. In my case, I certainly never thought that I would ever be doing what I'm doing today. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't a very confident child growing up because of 2 or 4 girls, wasn't particularly good in school, just one of those things where you feel very mediocre all the way. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you ask any of my old schoolmates, they will probably not remember me, except for being the little girl who always used to draw in class. I was either drawing or sent out of the class for drawing. So they remember me being sent out of class. Mm-hmm. But usually it was things like forgetting to bring my textbooks or, daydreaming in class, drawing in textbooks. But that was it. I was not a disruptive child, just a very dreamy one. Mm-hmm. So I think that that just led me to, I guess, a lot of self-doubt. I just thought I wasn't the smartest, I wasn't the cleverest. So I just thought that in a career, I would just sort of follow the path, follow the flow. I never imagined that I would ever become any kind of leader or even an entrepreneur. That word growing up in the 70s and the 80s was not very common. I think young children today are sort of taught, that there's all these amazing people out there, we could be entrepreneurs, So just back in the 70s or the 80s, right, that word just wasn't even in the vocabulary. So I didn't have a word for it. So when I left my job in luxury marketing after 6 years in one company, and I decided to, with 2 other ex-colleagues, start a PR and events agency specializing in fashion, luxury, and lifestyle. That was where we saw the niche. I mean, there were many PR companies and event companies in Singapore, but I felt that there wasn't one which had a specific niche, and that's what we did. So we started a company 24 years ago now.
Yes.
And I think along the way, I've learned a lot about partnerships, challenges, building a team. There are a lot of stories there about, I think, growing, which really growth never came out of comfort zones. So I can say I've had a very uncomfortable journey, and that finally it took that long for that dreamy little girl to finally become, I think, the person I am today.
Wow.
So yeah.
So from dreamy little girl to person today, how would you describe the woman Tjin is today?
Well, that's what's interesting, because when I look at my old photos of myself as a child, I think that I would have been intimidated by myself.
Oh, okay.
And that's a funny one, because sometimes people often meet me and they go, oh, you're so different from what we expected.
Yep.
And that always throws me off a little bit, because I'm like, what did you expect?
Yes.
So I think there's just been a lot of feeling that people see me as being very hard or driven or a goal-getter, and when they meet me, they go, oh, you're so down to earth, or you're so nice. I've even just had that. I'm so nice. I'm like, what does that mean? Do I not look nice? So I think it just looks like I look focused, and when I'm not smiling, I suppose I can look intimidating. But people form their own impressions of you based on what you do.
And it's not about you necessarily. It's their own stuff, right?
It really isn't, is it? But it's very interesting that that's the perception that people have who don't know me.
Yes.
And usually the first conversation that we have, and that's what they'll say. They said, I had this idea of you that you were one way and actually you are another. So I always find that interesting. I don't know what image I'm putting out there, but well, more importantly, once you get to know me, you'll realize that I'm actually very well. I'm down to earth. I like to have fun. I like to think I'm a funny person.
Yes.
I think a good sense of humor is really important. And it's just really interesting that how the public sees you isn't actually how you really are.
You know what? You tend to say things that a lot of people may be thinking, but don't have the courage to say. I mean, let's be frank. You do. And one of the things that I remember you spoke about in the Prestige panel was like your experience of speaking up for things that you believed in, whether it was like life beyond grades, or, I think you spoke about Tyler being bullied or something, your son. And, there were times where you spoke up and then you so-called got canceled, or you perceived yourself as being canceled. What was that experience like for you?
It was actually started with the bullying. So for me, with Tyler, he's such a sweet, sensitive child, right? And it's hard. When you have a child, you become a mother. No matter how tough or how strong or how armored you've become through years of just being in the public eye or doing what you do, then you have a child, and that child is like a vulnerable little piece of you walking out there with no shell.
Agreed.
And that's what it felt like for me. So I think because being so sweet and vulnerable, and just watching him get bullied, it was just so odd. I don't know what it was that he would like in kindergarten. It started in kindergarten. Kids, he'd ask like, "Can I play with you?" It's like, "No, we only have space for 3 kids." Or I'd be like, "Can I join you on the slide?" "No, the slide is full. It's crowded."
That's heartbreaking.
So when he comes and says, he says to me, "Mommy, like today I didn't have any playmates. I was the only one that couldn't find a group." I'm like, "You're 4 years old." I'm not sure what it is that makes sort of children sort of single out other children. But anyway, there were also cases where he was pinched or like punched or picked on, and of course I somehow couldn't leave it alone, because it just felt like it was very triggering for me, particularly because I always remembered what it was like in school, and I think it was tough because I saw kids getting bullied, and there were kids getting bullied. You're in an all-girls school, it does happen. And I was never strong enough to stand up for those kids. You were afraid to become a target yourself, right? So I stayed quiet in those years when you probably should have spoken up. That's when you keep your head down like everybody else, and that's why nobody speaks up, because you could be the next target, right? So I think in school I never took a stand for it. But when it happened to my son, I suppose something in me just sort of woke up and said, we shouldn't stand for this, because, raise kind kids. What's the point of having all these grades and kids being smart and getting into really good schools if they're simply not kind and pathetic children, right? So I started by talking about, raising kind kids, like, teaching our kids empathy. And it was really interesting because nobody wanted to talk about that. I would get answers like, as long as they're doing well in school, what does it matter? Literally, the answers would really come in like, the kids already have so much on their plates, like raise kind kids. Kids will be kids. I got that one a lot. Kids will be kids.
Oh my God.
Right? When it comes to bullying, kids will be kids.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just saying like, tell your son to toughen up, right? So nobody wanted to talk about the kids bullying.
Yep.
But what was interesting was if you change the slant a little bit, and I talked about the PSLE, right? And I said how kids struggle. The mental health is real. Competitive parenting is putting our kids, no one wants to talk about it, right?
Yes.
What's happening to the children, the mental health, the rising youth suicide. Nobody talks about that, right? But it's there, right? So I decided to just sort of shine a spotlight on that, about how grades aren't everything, and that there are alternative paths to life, and our children have different strengths, and we should actually encourage them instead of letting them think that grades are the only way to be successful. And it was really interesting because based on that campaign, Life Beyond Grades, we got a lot of flack for it, and it was not the kind of flack you'd expect. Because you think you're championing kids' mental health and telling parents competitive parenting is unhealthy, because if we can afford it and we pay for tuition, right? Then what happens to the kids that can't afford tuition?
So what was controversial about that?
That was super interesting. So the thing that they came after us, the co-founders of Life Beyond Grades, they came after us for being privileged.
Okay.
Only rich people can afford not to push their children.
Right, so it's like a personal attack.
It wasn't. It was really this belief that, oh, because you're rich, your kids don't have to do well in school because they've already have it made. Like, oh, you can just send your kids away, but the rest of us have to slog and strive to survive. And just because you're rich, you're saying grades don't matter. And I said, no, I'm not saying grades don't matter. I'm saying, that the kids have to try their very best, but grades are not everything.
Yes.
Right? So I think the difference was that. And also, very honestly, I said, if you look at what we're saying with Life Beyond Grades, we're saying, let kids be kids. This competitive parenting is harmful. We're pushing the children to the very brink, and the teachers are not allowed to do their jobs because the parents are over-teaching.
Yes.
So the teachers are just trying so desperately to keep up. Who suffers?
Yes.
The kids who can't afford the tuition.
Everyone suffers, to be honest.
Well, first, they suffer in different ways.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. The kids that are being pushed competitively have mental health issues. They're stressed. They're not allowed to play. They never discover their own creativity or what they enjoy doing, their passions. They have no playtime. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the children who can't afford the tuition. And because they're not in this hothouse of, sort of like overlearning.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you come to the PSLE exam, you'll realize that a lot of what is in those papers isn't even what's taught in schools. Because they're just, it's already that you have to have your own tuition to just keep up. So it was very interesting because to me, the campaign was really about sort of elevating everybody, especially the kids who couldn't afford all that tuition.
Yes.
Let kids learn in schools. Give kids their time and their space because we're in a changing world where tech has already disrupted everything. Right? So if you think about it, it was this World Economic Forum published a survey or a study that actually said, this was actually when I launched Life Beyond Grades, which was 6 years ago, that in 15 years' time, 50% of the jobs, as you know today, won't even exist.
Yes.
That was 5 years ago,
That's right,
So now we're 9 years into that.
Yes.
And if 50% of the jobs will no longer exist because of technology, then why do we still educate our children exactly the same way? That rote learning, we teach them as if Google doesn't exist. We memorize because in our time, Google didn't exist.
Yes.
Now you have so many more tools at our disposal, yet schools are still teaching the way they teach.
Yeah, so
right?
You're very passionate about speaking out about education, and I think it's so ironic because it came from the desire to help so many people, and it was kind of in a way inspired by your son's experience of bullying. But then in the end, it turned out as people trying to bully you.
It was interesting. Nobody wanted to talk about the bullying, but everybody wanted to talk about the PSLE. So I think sometimes when you want to get your message across too, it's about finding out what's relevant to people, right?
Yes.
And what was relevant is that every PSLE parent was stressed out.
Yes.
You can ask them even today, they're all worried, they're anxious. Are we doing enough? Are we doing too much? Are we breaking our children?
There's been so much research that has been done to show there's almost very little correlation between grades and success in life.
Exactly.
Right? So grades, the research suggests, are most strongly correlated with obedience, compliance, and discipline. Who can out-obedience or out-compliance an AI? Yeah, do you know what I mean? So if that's what we're looking for as measures of success, then we're really training our youth to be obsolete. Because the ultimate obedient slave is AI, that will do exactly what you ask for. But that's not why we need humans in the workplace of the future or even today.
You need our kids to be more creative, to be strategic, to have passion,
Absolutely. We need the kids who come up with the creative prompts for the chat
problem
GPT.
solving, right?
More than even problem solving. We need kids who problem identify. That's a higher order or more creative skill than just problem solve. Because AI can problem solve, but it's humans that direct them to what are the beautiful questions? What are the interesting problems? What is the pathways we should be exploring? And that calls for divergent rather than just convergent thinking.
I wish they put you in MOE.
I was working for MOE for some years,
really?
right?
Yeah.
Well, in NUS, we're a part of the education system. But I think that is one of the things that, will probably resonate a lot with. Like you, I wasn't very good at grades. I was in the gifted program, but that's an IQ thing. And I think people have conflated. They would think that, high IQ equals good at grades.
Right.
And that's absolutely not true. So in my family, I have two brothers. The three of us are all in the gifted program. All three of us, terrible grades, always threatened, to get with expulsion. And one of my brothers actually did get expelled. I nearly got expelled from the gifted program because IQ is not the same thing as grades. So we were very, very rebellious, didn't complete homework, totally disorganized and that sort of stuff. So yeah, and that's why my life's work, a lot of it is also when I was in education talking about how, we have to see the human being
Right.
for that human being's strengths and talents and gifts, and rather than just try to assess everyone by the same yardstick. But having said that, I'm also very interested, Tjin, because you're a person with so many facets and so many different hats. You're an entrepreneur, you're a mom, in fact, you have so many different businesses, right? Like, can you share with us how you, I know this is a cliche. People say, like, how do you juggle it all? But like, I really am curious, like, how do you do it all? Do you figure out like what priorities you have at that point in time, or do you try to like somehow do it all?
I think the key to answer all that question is the same answer. Everything, whether it's your work or it's family or it is, anything that you do, it is community. And in everything, I'm willing to accept help. I'm willing to understand that I can't do everything,
Yes.
and I'm not the best person to do everything. So I have communities that are supportive. So I accept help as a mom.
Yes.
I have a mom-in-law that helps. My kids sometimes go to my parents' place, to play table tennis with my dad.
Yep.
My mom teaches Jake how to like play card games, like memorize the countries. Mom-in-law helps to take him to some of his classes. So you have to accept the help,
Yes.
because in the entrepreneur role that I'm in, I take meetings throughout the day. Different times, it's impossible to predict when I'll be able to pick a kid up from a class or not. So
Yes.
because it's impossible to schedule my schedule, I accept that I need help. And I think when you try to do it all, you will never be able to do everything well, right? So as a mom, I have help. As an entrepreneur, I built a team. And there's this saying, right, that goes, a bad boss is one who is feared, right? A good boss is one who is loved and respected. The best boss is one who empowers his people, right? Who is practically not even there because, I've actually empowered them to do my job because I want them to grow. So I'm not going to be sitting there on top of an organization delegating work. Instead, I want to empower them and I want them to grow and I want them to do what I do so that they can, they can rise. So I believe that when we are willing to empower others and to grow others, that we all find, our collective freedom, right? We grow. So it's not about hoarding that leadership role or,
Yes.
believing that only one person can have power. So the reason why it seems that, you're traveling, you have this great life,
Yes.
you're doing all these social things, you're running Crib,
Yes.
a not-for-profit organization, you're supporting women entrepreneurs, you're doing talks. So in all that is because I have an excellent team
Yes.
that has been fully empowered to run, and they run, right? They
Yes.
do their job better than probably I could do it today. So accepting help, building a community, empowering others, whether it's work, it's an organization that you run like Crib, or it is my family life, all of it requires me to build communities,
Yes.
to count on others, rely on others, be there for others and have others be there for you, and to let go of perfection. So I think that was the thing that a mentor once said to me. We had Jenny Chua, who was a mentor at Crib in the early days, and I remember she said this to me because it always resonated. And I think I was burnt out and stressed at that time. And she said, Tjin, you have to let go. And I said, what do you mean let go? She said, you have to understand what is good enough. Good enough is not perfect, and perfection is holding you back. You try to do everything 110%, you will not succeed in the long run, right? You have to understand what is good enough. And I thought long and hard about that, and I thought about my team telling me, Tjin, it's not enough for you to just come 1 hour before an event and say the lights are not the perfect color, or the carpet is like not the right color, the backdrop's not high enough. They said, you want to fix these things, then you come, you join the meetings, you be there for the work in progress meetings, you just show up and tell us what's wrong with the event, right? And then I also realized that what I was doing was wrong because the clients were happy, my team was doing its best, it was good enough. I was that overbearing boss saying the lights are not the right color, but actually the clients were perfectly happy. To them, it was the right color. To the team, it was the right color. To me, it was not the right color, but I have to let go,
Yes.
of that level of perfection because it was all good enough.
Yes.
And I think that once I had learned to let go, right, you're not going to be the perfect employer. You're not going to be the perfect boss, the perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect anything, really.
Yes.
And if you let go of that need to be perfect, you'll find that life is pretty good.
It's so true. My therapist Volker was on the podcast as well, and we were talking about how one of the most important lessons he taught me was good enough is good enough. A very amazing lesson, because for me, my first 10 years in investment banking, most bankers don't know what the meaning of this word enough is. You know what is enough? What is enough?
Look
Is
at the
enough
kids
enough?
today. Look at them in school. Is it ever good enough to be good
Yes.
enough? No, you have to be the top 10, the
Yes.
top 1.
Yes.
What do you mean 95%? What happened to the last 5%? No, there's no such thing as good enough.
Yes, but
right?
the irony is that if you actually let go of the perfectionism, you can actually be like more successful than all the perfectionists. I'll give you a real example. Just this weekend, Rach and I are preparing for the launch of our I Am Well journal. So as an experiment, I reached out to the community and I was like, okay, everybody share with me like your stories about using the journal. And like, were you successful with it or did you fall off the bandwagon? I'm just curious, let me know. So I want to like do this informal like poll. And I realized that something like maybe 82% of them had like been successful and then 18% of them were not successful using the journal. So of course, like I need to find out why. Why didn't the journal work for you? I thought it was a very good one. But I went and asked them, and one biggest trend was amongst the people who were not successful, they said that the reason was because once they had gotten busy and they had missed like 1 or 2 days, then the critical voice, the perfectionist started going like, you couldn't do it, so you can't keep up. So they were so demoralized that they were just like, okay, forget it.
Right, they let go.
I just can't deal with it anymore. I'm too confronted by seeing this imperfect spaces. So now this whole journal, I just jettison. Whereas the women who were like, okay, you know what? It's not perfect, but 80% of the pages are filled out. In the end, they got their goals done because they accepted that 20% of the time shit happens. And they just started again. And I think that that's like so powerful that the good enough actually leads to like the bigger results than the striving to be perfect and ending up with nothing.
Absolutely. Can't agree more.
I want to go into slightly different but related tack. Let's talk about seasons of life. I'm in my 40s. Our dear friend Rachel's in her 30s. And actually, you're in your 50s. You speak a lot about it on social media. What does this season of life mean to you?
I think it's just it's so interesting that women fear aging. Like it's something, and I understand why they do though, because we feel that we're going to become irrelevant, or the society views you as being sort of like, well, old, right, and just not attractive, and just less relevant, right? So I think though that as I've aged, I find myself just growing more and more powerful instead of the other way around. I find that the 50s are your most empowering decade ever, because let's put it this way, right? In your teens, you were just kind of looking for yourself, self-searching. In your 20s, right, you were still trying to figure out what you were going to do and who you're going to become. You were still working through different sort of versions of yourself, trying to find out what you were good at and what your passion should be. You were still soul-searching. In your 30s, you were striving, right? You were working hard. You were trying to grow. You were in a way, this is the hardest generation. I think that sort of the decade to be in. The 30s are really years of struggle, growth, like sort of just really hard work, right? Grinding. And the 40s are a different level. So you're not in the arms in grease, elbows, elbows up in grease kind of grind anymore. But now you're at that strategic, competitive, and sometimes toxic stage of life where it is difficult. It is where, this is your 40s is where you kind of define who you're going to become. This is the make or break decade, your 40s. It's probably you're nearing the apex or the peak of your career. You're probably near the top that you're ever going to reach. You're really, in your 40s, right? You're past assistant manager level. You're past probably senior manager level. You're striving for the AD, director, VP, president, C-suite level. That's your 40s, right?
Yes.
So this is the decade where it's a fight. It's really it's fight time, right? So you're pushing really hard. So your 40s are going to be a challenging time. And then when you reach your 50s, if you've done your 40s right and your 30s were a good foundation, you should be hitting that level where you now look around and you go, I've never been, more empowered. I've never had more resources. I've never had more time flexibility, because now the kind of work you're doing should be more strategic, right? More consulting rather than, like doing, physical doing, right?
Yeah.
That's what you build yourself up for. So in your 50s, suddenly you look around and you go, the air is clearer up here. Now I can hear myself think, I can breathe, right? I have flexibility, I have power, I have the network, I have the resources. We're just leveling up, right? And then, of course, it's really funny. I see TikTok and they're like, Gen Z goes, oh, I'm 30, I'm old. We're going to be 30, so we're going to be old. So I'm like, and then they look at us and they go, boomers, and I'm thinking, it's okay. Why do we care what someone who's 25 thinks of us? You know what I mean?
Yes, of course.
I almost think like, are we defining ourselves by what other generations think of us? Why should we? We know like what we are and who we are. So why do we define ourselves by what others think of us? So I think also that when you hit this age, you just stop caring what others think of you, because you no longer need the validation.
It's the DGAF era.
You don't need the validation of others.
Totally.
You know your own capabilities, you know your own power, and at the same time, then you stop competing. And that is actually the true freedom. When you stop competing, you realize there's so much room for collaboration.
Yes.
There is enough space for all of us. I don't have to beat that other woman or beat that other person. There's enough space for all of us to be at the top together.
Were you very competitive when you were younger?
I think never. Well, I guess I was a dreamy child, and I didn't grow up competitive. But I think I was always put off by how competitive other people were, and then it'd be very reactive. They did what? Oh, okay. Well, then we should do the same,
Yes.
So I think it was more like that. But of course, over time, I did realize that sometimes it's better to a good defense, right? The best defense is a good offense, right? So you actually sometimes you go into pitches, right? And you play it out for the clients. You think about what your competitors would pitch, and you cannot tell your client why that's a bad idea even before the others get a chance to pitch. And that's just strategic, right?
Yes,
but I think it is. It just simplifies the process and lands the job faster. Right?
Yes.
So I think it's not that I was competitive or trying to put others down. I think it was just that you do what you need to do to get ahead in those hustle years.
Yes.
And I think what's also really interesting is that there were times in my hustle years when, if I look at myself today, looking back at my 35-year-old self, I probably wouldn't have liked myself very much. The person that I was probably a bit toxic, a little bit stressed out, a little bit, too self-absorbed to I'm struggling. And I'll always remember this because I had a friend, actually Nadia, Nadia Hutagalung, that's right.
I know her, yes.
Yes, so I remember I was once speaking at a Longchamp event, right? And it was really for sort of Women's Day, International Women's Day. So I was talking about, of course, communities, how important it is to help others, support each other. And she came up to me after the talk and she said to me, and I will never forget this because it really resonated with me. She said, Tjin, you're a different person than you were 10 years ago. Wow. She said, 10 years ago, I came to you for help to do a pro bono press release, I think for a green project. And she said, I gave her a look of such abject horror, like sponsor a press release, are you mad? Sponsor press release? Why would I do that? I didn't say it, but I think the expression I gave her was just So I will always regret that. I think because I had no idea I did it. To me, but you see, the stage I was at 10 years ago, my company was fighting for its survival.
Yes, of course.
We were drowning. We were up to ears.
It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Not surviving.
Nobody can actually be generous when they have scarcity.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
For sure.
And I, of course, being the head of an agency or a company, I was very alone and I couldn't let people know how much I was suffering.
Yes.
Cash flow was an issue. It was a terrible time, and I was doing all the work myself as well to help the team because, we couldn't make payroll that month.
Right.
We didn't just get all on board with it. So the idea of doing a sponsored press release or project at that time, it probably showed on my face and it shouldn't have. But the impression and the takeaway from anybody asking me to do any pro bono work then would have been, Tjin is a very selfish, self-centered person.
Right.
She's not willing to do charity work. She's not willing to give back. And they might have been right at that time, but it was also because of the circumstances I was in. I was in a very toxic place, and I was a toxic person because I was in a toxic place. But the truth is, you evolve. It's been 10 years. I grew out of that. We recovered, we thrived, we did well. And as you said earlier, coming from a mindset of abundance makes a person different. When you're coming from scarcity mode, you are really in fight mode, right? And you can't even think straight. You're just fighting to survive. And when you are thinking in an abundance mode, it is, I'm blessed, I'm grateful, and I want to give back. So I think Nadia seeing me 10 years on, and she said, you're a different person. You were talking about helping and building communities. And I wondered, she said, I looked at it and I wondered if, was it real, or were you being real about this? Or are you just speaking because it's a Women's Day conversation? And she said, I feel you're authentic. So I want to know what changed, right? So I told her, I said, I'm sorry you felt, 10 years ago that I was not not happy or not willing to do charity work because you were probably right. I was just not in the headspace or had the bandwidth to give. And today I want to do that. I want to give back, because I know what it's like to not have had support. And so that's, people change, people grow, people evolve. So back to why I enjoy being in my 50s so much.
Yes.
Is because I finally passed through all those, I think, toxic versions of myself. And there will be, and this is interesting, right? People who know you from those years who will think you are still that person.
Yes.
Because they didn't grow with you. So they may have met you in your 30s or your early 40s and said, oh, I know her. She's not a nice person. She's not a good person. Or something like, are you sure she's doing charity work? She hates charity work, right? But I'd be like, but that was me in my 30s, dying, right?
Yes.
And today in my 50s, I'm thriving, right?
That's so important. I just was talking to a friend before this who was like, when I first met, she was saying when she had first met me, she was like, oh, you're such a bitch. You're such a tai-tai. Chauffeur dropped you off and then you gave everyone this look of disdain. And I was like, well, I probably was, and I said I was being a bitch. At that point of time with my ex-husband, I probably just had a quarrel with him because it was a relationship that wasn't working. I was in a job that wasn't aligned with who I was. And every day was a fight. Every day was a quarrel. Every day was friction, and I was full of armor. And just when you are in that zone of scarcity or whatever, friction, everything to you looks like a battle. Everything looks like a fight.
You're always in fight mode.
You're always in fight mode, so everything turns out to be a fight.
That's right.
But again, just like how we have virtuous cycles and we have vicious cycles, and it's very hard to get out of either, but both spiral in their own ways, right? But somehow I feel like if, like you said, if we get the right mentors, the right community, if we have our awakenings, and realize that, okay, better stop spiraling and better start the momentum the other way, then we really get the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. And probably some people still think I'm a bitch because they met me at that era of my life. Once I met a banker friend recently, and he said to me, Krista, I heard that you're teaching mindfulness now. I always thought that you should be teaching mouthfulness, not mindfulness.
And they are right to think so in some ways, because I can understand why people would have had that impression of me. Once upon a time, it may no longer be the person you are today, but people will have that. That's the only contact that they had of you. But you really, that's why they say you can't please everyone. You can't make everyone like you. And that's okay. You have to be okay
we just have to do our best. What advice would you give to people who are afraid of putting their opinions out there, whether it's speaking up at work or whether it's posting something on social media? They're so scared to show up as who they are.
Well, that's interesting. I guess the question really is, what are they hoping to achieve? Why do you have to post your truth on social media, right? If you were not looking to make change and you just wanted an account because you wanted to share your cute puppy pictures, then you don't have to share your truth on social media. But if you were looking to make change, if you cared a lot about something, whatever that topic might be, right, then staying silent about it isn't going to make any change. And I think venting about it, among inner circles instead, it just becomes toxic. So if you're going to spend your time complaining instead of just speaking a truth, right, then I would rather say don't spend that time complaining, because you're in that cycle of negativity where you and your friends just sort of work yourselves up into this sucks, or this is so bad, or this is, and then nothing gets done. So I think that social media, like I said, is a double-edged sword. It exists, right? And it's a powerful tool. You can choose to use it for puppy pictures, or you can choose to use it to change something about the world that you don't like. But the latter takes courage, and I think it also takes. I think you also have to accept that it's two ways, right? It's a two-way street. If you decide that you don't want to speak your truth, that's totally fine. But then, if you are trying to be authentic, then you're not going to be authentic. And I think a lot of challenges with creators today is that they put out there what they think sponsors want to see or advertisers want to see, or it's always picture perfect, But that's not what resonates. People want to see something that is raw or real, or people who are something that people are not afraid to, say, like you said, it might be an unpopular opinion, but it's there. Like what I said, so what happened during COVID, why I was cancelled was I actually was very stressed out because my company was in post-COVID recovery, and it was so hard to hire people, young people. We would hire, they would stay 4 months, they would leave. And I think it was just frustrating to not be able to groom a team, right? I remember just expressing, I was watching these memes on TikTok where young people were saying, oh, I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to be a girl boss. I want to lie in a bed of roses all day with my lover and read poetry. Right? And I thought that was great, except who pays for you and your lover to lie in a bed of roses all day. So I was quite triggered by that. I think COVID was a difficult time for me.
Yes.
I was quite toxic during COVID because I was so unhappy about being cooped up. And again, I was not who I am. During COVID, I was a very unhappy person.
Yes.
So I was like very frustrated, and I just said, and to this day, I think I looked at it very long and hard. And what I said was, young people are not motivated to work hard, right? If you have dreams, you have to work for your dreams, right? Like,
Just fair enough.
right? And I just shared, like, you can lie in a bed of roses one day, but first you're going to have to earn the right to lie in a bed of roses and, read poetry the lover all day. So I think the response that I got for that post was so hard, so fast, so furious that I had no idea what hit me. So people were saying things like, "Oh, you're a boomer, you deserve to get like attacked and all that. You must run a terrible company, And so I was very puzzled by all that. Why it was so vitriolic? People that never followed me suddenly just came out of the woodworks to say that you're a terrible person, and that And I said, wait, you're making a lot of assumptions. I never said, a lot of what they were saying, they were sort of saying that, I work people, I'm a slave driver. I said, where's all this coming from? I just said young people are not motivated to work hard. I think one of the questions I said was that we've had as a first interview question, what is work-life balance in your company like? So I said, so people would say, you don't care about work-life balance. I said, I do, but it's not a first interview question.
Right.
So I think a lot of things were just taken out of context.
Yes.
But I think that it was very interesting because although it was very, I think, triggering for a lot of people, so young people came forward and sort of criticized us boomers for not understanding what motivates or drives young people. And I said, I never said anything about motivates or drives you guys. I'm just saying that we need to have conversations, I think, about, how to motivate and drive you guys, right? Like, what is it that organizations should be doing? Is it, they want flexi working, they want a lot of things, but we should have these conversations instead of just, them skipping out. They get a job offer $400 more and they're gone, right? And I think it was at that time when labor scarcity, or there was this shortage of labor, so it was very, very difficult to hire. And I think that, again, there are cycles. Things have changed again today, but it was a then situation.
Yes.
And my young people, and I spoke to 30, 40 of them, they all gave me the same reaction, which is so interesting. And they said, Tjin, it's because they don't know you, right? They're attacked because they don't know you. Like, they don't know that you worked hard before. They don't know that, that you care about, the team, or they don't know you, right? So it's true. If you look at my social media today, right, it looks like, I travel, I have a good life, I live well, right?
Yes.
But they don't know the journey, right? That I used to be a real, a hustler, right? I never had a weekend in my 30s. I worked around the clock 7 days a week. I'd wake up at 8 a.m. and sleep at 3 a.m. And I did that for months at a time, especially running that fashion week. Right?
You're easy canvas for people to project on. I feel also because of how you look. But so much of it is like people snap judgments. If they were to just see you looking the way you are, you're obviously very well put together. You are very photogenic, your feed is very aesthetic, and instantly people have that simultaneous, like, firstly, cannot relate, especially when they're feeling bad about themselves. Secondly, I always say people compare their insides with others' outsides. And when you are scrolling through Instagram, you normally, at the bottom 10% of your experience, you're tired, it's the end of a long day, and then you're comparing your inside experience to people's outsides. Wow, Tjin looks like, it's like, you're only, like most of us, we're only posting, me included, I'm only posting the top 5 to 10% slice of my life, and people are watching that kind of comparison. Yeah, so I feel like part of that is also being cognizant that, like, that's when people project all that stuff on you, that is not you. They're projecting it on, like, what that avatar represents to them. You know what I mean?
And it's very true. And I also always say this, right? Happy people are never the ones that are triggered.
Yes.
And so when people criticize you or attack you or judge you, they're coming a place of their own insecurity or their own unhappiness.
Yes.
It's more about them than about you.
Yeah.
But you're an easy target, like you said, because you are a public person, right?
Yeah.
So actually, what I do about that is I explained, I said, look, I mean, they say, oh, you're a public person. I said, well, my account is public. That's what you mean. Like yours is public too.
Yep.
But like there's a real person behind these accounts. And I actually feel that my community is really quite a supportive place, right? But I also don't hesitate to block people who are toxic. I never block people who just have a different point of view. I think different points of view are great. I learn from them. In fact, I will often exchange. People say, oh, you don't agree with me? Tell me why. I want to find out more. What don't I know? What can I learn from you? So I enjoy. I don't mind conversations. People can DM me and we can talk about why they disagree, and that's fine. I would never block that person. The people I block are those who are outright disrespectful, name calling, just rude. And why would you keep these people in your house?
For sure.
Right? So then people will say, oh, you block people because you can't stand people who disagree with you. And I'm like, no, I don't block people because they disagree. I actually like to learn from people who have different points of view from me. But I do block people who are disrespectful and rude, and people who like those comments. Interestingly, because I don't understand why somebody would say something like, you're a stupid boomer, and if 130 people like that comment, why would you not block them? If it's your account, would you, and you were a person anyone's account, why would you have want these people in there looking at you, who are just outright hostile, right?
Yes.
So I feel like you have the right to choose who you let into your house.
For sure. It's your space in the digital world. And I totally agree with you. If you're coming in my space as a guest, you should act like a guest. Well, and if not, you have your own space, it's your house.
You don't have to look at it.
Yeah, you don't have to.
So if it's triggering, so what I'm saying is if it's triggering, then don't look.
Yeah.
So I'll help you not to look, right? If it bothers you so much, right?
You're somebody who obviously knows a lot about being productive. What are some of your best productivity tools or secrets? Like, for instance, are there certain things that you swear by, like time blocking or journaling or having a PA, or what are some of your best game changers for you in becoming more successful?
Oh gosh, I'm smiling because I have none of those, and I listen to Rach and you talk about it, and I'm always like, oh, it's so mindful, journaling, wake up in the morning, yoga, exercise, and I'm like, none of that. I saw that question. I wake up in the morning, I catch up on my messages. And
what time do you wake up?
So I usually sleep at about 3.
Oh,
and I
my
wake
goodness.
up at about 8, or 9
So you only get 5 hours of sleep?
Yeah, because I find that my mind is most active at night.
Right.
So when everyone is asleep, then I start to think, right?
Yes.
So I get very active. I jot down notes at 3 a.m. in the morning. And then when I wake up, it's like when you sleep, your mind percolates.
Yes.
And I find solutions.
Yes,
So I'm
me
very
too.
productive. I wake up in the morning and I have all the things I was mulling about the night before. I have answers.
Yes.
So I start to churn out WhatsApp messages of people. This is a solution for this. Have you thought
From your
about this?
bed.
Yeah. I want to launch this, from my bed. I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is I just sort of translate all the ideas that have come in your sleep, and also that's what I do. And then I wake up, I have a cup of coffee, I take my perimenopause pill, HRT pill, and then I go to work. My first meetings usually start at about 9:30 or 10.
It's like you go into the office, or you work from home, or?
I don't go into the office as much because most of my meetings are meetings, right?
Yes.
Most of the work I do are in networks, connections. You meet clients, or you're meeting your partners. So I always think that for me to be effective, I shouldn't be in the office.
Yes.
I need to be out there.
Really, it sounds like there's no such thing as a typical day, because it could
There is
mean
no
anything.
typical day. There's no typical day at all.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. You're the first person that on my podcast who's been like, actually, I don't have productivity tips. I love it.
Really? Is everybody else so productive? Now you're making me second guess myself.
I think, you know what? The secret, I think the secret is that for you seem to have a very strong village or tribe of people, like your mother-in-law, that's your dad or whoever. All these people, quite honestly, I don't have. I don't have the same sort of family system, because my mom is a workaholic. She runs her own business. She's very busy working. My dad is not in the best of health. My husband's side of the family, they are in Europe, and my ex-husband, he's in Ireland. So I literally have, many of the women that I know, I guess a lot of people who come on my podcast, they're expats, or they maybe just don't have that sort of community. So then they end up having to be super focused on how can I outsource, how can I
But that's interesting, because I feel like my true community is my colleagues and my friends.
Right. Interesting.
So each one, so family has a family community, work has a work community, and then there's my friends, and I'm very close. I have groups of girlfriends that are like life sisters.
Actually, I wanted to ask you about this, because in this regard, you're very, very different from me. I don't know what it is, but since I was young, I've never really had very, very strong groups of friends. because like my first job was already investment banking. That's like a 3 o'clock in the morning job. Everyone you know is a male.
Be a male-dominated
It's a
industry.
male-dominated environment for the first 10 years. Then I became mother and I married quite young. I had my kids in my 20s. So immediately as a mother in your 20s, your life is your family.
Right.
And I never had these groups of girlfriends like, you know, like Rachel, like you, like Leanne, like all go on holiday together and that sort of stuff. Never happened. Never happened for me. I was always the kind of person that was like with my own family and that sort of stuff. And therefore, I think that that's something that's so fascinating. So recently I saw that you went to Disneyland.
Yes, with
and
5 girlfriends celebrating
Yes.
3 of their 40th birthdays.
do you have a lot of these girls trips?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
And before that, I was in the Raksa, like a Bangkok wellness resort.
Yeah,
which
that
you
I went
also
to.
visited.
Yes, I
Wasn't
love
it
it.
amazing?
Yes.
Yeah, but that was that, right? So
How many of these girls trips do you have? Like
many, but I think it's also because I think growing up, I'm a middle child, right?
Yes.
So I became very extroverted because
Right.
you disappear at home, you're 2 or 4, nobody really notices you're there. You know, so I think that I was always seeking like a validation outside, looking for friends, looking for a place to belong. And then I guess I never really found that sort of in my early primary years because I was always moved from class to class because back then in those grading systems, if you didn't do well, you would drop the class. You didn't do well, you dropped the class. So I keep making circles of friends, then
Yep.
I would be dropped the class. So I kept having to make friends over and over again. So I always longed for, I think, you know, a tribe, like, you know, like girlfriends were
Yes.
always really, really important.
Yes.
Some of my best girlfriends, I suppose, have been with me since I was 14 years old and are still really close to me today. But many of the girls you meet along the way, like interestingly, you said you just never happened for you. But
Yes.
some of the girls I'm closest to, I only met in my 40s.
Oh, interesting.
Probably girls I met only 5 years ago. And it's probably because these girls are at the same stage of life that you are at. And they're probably a bit younger than I am because
Yes.
our kids are probably the same age. So I had my son at 40, right? Because
My kids are much older than
Yes,
yours,
I
my
know.
dear.
I
My
know,
youngest
yeah.
is 6. It's like going to be 16.
Really? So, so I know I had my kids very late, right? Because I was working too hard to have children, and I waited till I was 40 to have my first son. By then, I didn't even know if I'd be able to have him, but he came, right? And then Jake came, so I have 2 boys. So a lot of the friends that I sort of made along that way are people who now have kids about the same age as mine.
Right.
So I have different groups of friends, and I think that girlfriends are really the backbone, I think, of everything, a lot of the things that I do, because like you said, for me, you say, what is my productivity, like secret?
Yes.
To me, it is community. I said it before, right?
Yeah.
So it is people to catch your ball. Basically, it's teamwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you wake up in the morning, you have a ball. You have many balls because you went to sleep thinking, how am I going to solve this issue or this challenge, this problem? And then you wake up with all these balls,
Yes.
and then you start to throw them. This one goes to the team. Please help me, like contact this client. This needs to be done.
Yes.
Or I have a great solution for this client's challenge. I know what we can do. Here it is, right?
Right.
Or we need to figure this one out. Or to the family, so to the friends.
But you even
to
will
the,
throw the balls to your girlfriends?
well, it depends on what it is. So, for example, even with Crib, I have 2 of my girlfriends. They're so sweet. They're helping me run my Crib circles, which is like forums, right?
Wow.
So they're each leading one forum. So whenever I need help, I'd be like, girls, like this is troubling me right now.
Yes.
We need to find solutions, and they come up with solutions. And I think this is where having, like you have, like Rach or like
Yes.
Sabrina, your girlfriends.
Yes.
It helps to have high-powered, smart, intelligent, problem-solving
Yes.
girlfriends.
Yes, true.
So if you surround yourself with these brilliant, like-minded women, right? Sometimes that the answers, the valid, everything that you need or you seek is actually within your circle. So
Yes.
there's this saying, right, about you are the sum of the 6 people around you.
Yes, agree.
Right, and if you surround yourself with negative people who just want to complain all day, then you're going to become a negative person who doesn't believe that there's any hope. Everything sucks. I'll never afford a house because everybody's can't afford a house anyway.
Lowers your vibe.
It just lowers your vibe, right? And there's so much research you can see the studies done on that about
sure.
putting high performers next to you, and then your
Yes.
output performs. You put them next to a low performer, output drops by 40%.
For sure.
So this is the same with life.
For sure.
So who surrounds you sort of determines your mindsets, right? Your attitudes, right?
Even your biome, and like we all have this like microbiome which extends to like more than a meter ahead of us. It's like a dome, invisible dome of like our bacteria.
Really?
Yes, and in fact, like researchers are looking at this because like your mood is so much affected by your microbiome,
your energy
and
in a
your
way.
gut.
That's your energy, your
It's your
vibe.
energy, and like when we mix with each other, our microbiomes interact. So
That's why you have great chemistry with some people, and
Yes.
you just with some other people.
yeah, so it's totally true on every single level. Energy is infectious, people are infectious, and who you surround yourself really dictates your destiny.
100%.
I want you to give me quick, first off the top of your head, pieces of advice for people in their 20s,
That everything was going to be all right.
in your 30s,
That all that hard work was going to pay off.
in your 40s,
that we would survive and come through this.
Wow, I love that. And in your 50s?
Life is just getting better.
Yay, I love that. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Tjin.
you.
It's
Thank
been
you
a
for
real
having me.
pleasure. I really could have talked to you for a very long time.
Please do. We can be girlfriends.
Yes, we can be girlfriends.
If you want to come to Montenegro?
Okay, we're going to drop everything in the show notes so that you can follow Tjin. Thanks so much for joining us on Confident Growth. And please like, share, subscribe, and follow us for more amazing thought leaders and tips on productivity and personal growth. Bye!